Millionaire sees street vendor working with twins who look exactly like him. Then the truth comes out. Brandon Mitchell stopped on the sidewalk as if he had been punched in the stomach. His eyes fixed on the street vendor arranging a tray of colorful costume jewelry. But it wasn't her that held his attention. It was the two twin babies she carried on her chest, wrapped in an olive green cloth. Those little chubby faces were a perfect copy of his own baby pictures from when he was just a few months old. "My God," he murmured, feeling his legs tremble. The woman noticed his fixed gaze and instinctively hugged her children tighter against her chest. Her brown eyes shone with a mix of fear and distrust. "Can I help you?" she asked with a firm voice, but Brandon could hear the nervousness behind her words. "No, sorry," he stammered, trying to pull himself together. "It's just that your children, they look so much like—" "Like what?" she interrupted, already putting away the jewelry on the tray with quick movements. Brandon realized he was scaring the woman. She must have been around 30, with tan skin and hair tied back with a beige scarf. Her gestures were quick, like someone used to working on the street and needing to stay alert. "Nothing, it was just my imagination," he lied, but he kept watching the babies. One of them opened his light blue eyes and stared directly at him. Brandon felt a shiver run down his spine. It was like looking into a mirror of the past. The vendor finished putting away her things and stood up quickly. "Good afternoon," she said sharply, starting to walk away. Brandon stood still, watching her disappear into the crowd on Fifth Avenue in the heart of New York City. His heart was still racing when his cell phone rang. "Mr. Brandon?" It was Nancy, his secretary. "You missed the 3 o'clock meeting." He looked at his watch. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. He had been standing there for over an hour, trying to process what he had seen. "Reschedule for tomorrow," he said automatically. "But sir, it's with the Japanese investors. They came especially to—" "Reschedule, Nancy," he repeated, hanging up the phone. In the following days, Brandon couldn't get that image out of his head. During meetings at his tech company, during business dinners, even during sleep, he saw those two little faces identical to his. On the third day, he returned to Fifth Avenue at the same time. The vendor wasn't there. He asked other street vendors, but no one knew about a woman with twins who sold costume jewelry. "Lots of people sell around here, boss," said a young man selling sweets. "And not everyone comes every day, you know." Brandon started going to that area every day after work. His routine as a successful businessman was replaced by an obsessive search. Nancy began asking questions about his cancelled appointments. It was on a rainy Thursday that he saw her again. She was sheltered under the awning of a closed store, trying to protect the babies from the light rain that was falling. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. This time, Brandon approached more carefully. He bought an umbrella at a nearby store and walked over to her. "Sorry to bother you," he said, keeping a respectful distance. "It's raining quite a bit. Would you accept this umbrella?" She looked at him with distrust. "I've seen you before." "That's true. I work nearby and always walk down this street," he explained, holding out the umbrella. "I don't want anything in return, it's just to keep the children dry." The woman hesitated. One of the babies began to cry, wet from the droplets dripping from the awning. "All right," she accepted reluctantly, "but just the umbrella." "Of course," Brandon smiled. "What are the little ones' names?" "Ethan and Noah," she replied, opening the umbrella and covering her children better. "Beautiful names, and you?" "Amber," she said after a pause. "Amber Davis." "Nice to meet you, Amber. I'm Brandon." She nodded her head but kept her defensive posture. Brandon realized he shouldn't insist at that moment. "I hope the rain stops soon," he said, stepping away. "Take care." Amber watched him walk away with a confused expression on her face. She didn't understand why that elegant man, in an expensive suit with the appearance of a businessman, was being kind to her. That night, Brandon couldn't sleep. He researched everything online about twins, heredity, genetic similarities. The more he read, the more a disturbing idea grew in his mind. 3 years ago, he had made some donations at a fertility clinic. At the time, he was going through a difficult period after the end of a long relationship and decided that if he wasn't going to have children naturally, he could at least help couples who dreamed of being parents. "This is crazy," he murmured to himself, pacing back and forth in his luxurious apartment in Soho. But the resemblance was undeniable. He looked for his baby photos in the old family album. The comparison was frightening. It was as if someone had cloned his childhood appearance. The following Friday, he returned to Fifth Avenue with a ready excuse. He brought some snacks and water. "Amber," he called when he saw her. She turned, surprised to hear her name. "I brought a snack for you and the children," he said, showing the paper bag. "It must be hard to take care of two babies and work at the same time." "Why are you doing this?" she asked directly. Brandon felt his heart race. How to explain without sounding like a madman? "I have young nephews," he lied. "I know how tough it is for mothers." Amber accepted the snacks but remained suspicious. "You don't seem like someone who hangs around here." "I work at a company 2 blocks from here," he explained. "I always pass by this street." "What kind of company?" "Technology, app development." Amber nodded, apparently satisfied with the answer. One of the twins, Ethan, started to cry. "He must be hungry," she said, looking for the bottle in her bag. "Can I hold Noah while you feed Ethan?" offered Brandon, his heart pounding. Amber hesitated for a long moment, studying his face. "All right," but only for a few minutes. Carefully, she passed Noah into Brandon's arms. The baby was light and warm, smelling of baby powder. When he opened his little blue eyes and stared at Brandon, he felt an inexplicable emotion take over his chest. "He looks a lot like his brother," he commented, trying to keep his voice normal. "Everyone says that. They're identical twins," Amber explained while giving the bottle to Ethan. "Even I get confused sometimes." "And their father?" Amber stiffened immediately. "I don't have a husband," she said dryly. "I'm a single mother." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry." "It's okay, it's complicated." Noah began to make contented noises in Brandon's lap, as if he were comfortable. The businessman felt a strange connection with that tiny baby. "They're very calm," he commented. "Not always." Amber smiled for the first time. "At night, when one cries, the other wakes up too. I haven't slept properly in months. It must be very hard to take care of 2 babies alone." "We manage," she replied with pride. "I've always managed on my own in life." Brandon watched her carefully. Amber had a natural beauty, despite the visible tiredness in her eyes. Her hands were calloused from hard work, but her gestures with her children were delicate and full of love. "How long have you worked here on the street?" "About 6 months. Before I worked at a clinic, but I had to leave when I got pregnant." Brandon's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of clinic?" "A fertility clinic. I was a receptionist." The puzzle pieces started falling into place in Brandon's mind. He tried to stay calm, but his hands trembled slightly as he held Noah. "New Life Fertility Center?" he ventured, mentioning the name of the place where he had made his donations. Amber looked at him surprised. "How do you know that?" "I know it by name," he stammered. "It's a well-known clinic." "I worked there for 2 years," she told him. "It was a good job, but when they found out I was pregnant, they started pressuring me to leave. They said a single pregnant woman didn't give a good impression to patients." "That's ridiculous," said Brandon, genuinely outraged. "I know, but I needed the money, so I put up with it until I couldn't hide my belly anymore." "And the fertility treatment, did you do it there?" Amber looked down, clearly uncomfortable with the question. "It was complicated. I always wanted to be a mother, but I found out I had trouble getting pregnant naturally. Since I worked at the clinic, I managed to get the treatment at a discount." "And did it work on the first try?" "It worked too well," she laughed without humor. 2 came at once. Noah started squirming restlessly in Brandon's arms. Amber stood up and took the baby back. "I need to change his diaper," she said. "Thank you for your help." "You're welcome. Can I come back tomorrow? Maybe bring something else for you." Amber studied him for a moment. Why do you want to help us? Brandon searched for an answer that wouldn't sound strange. You remind me of my sister, he made up. She also raised her kids alone. I know how hard it is. All right then, but you don't need to bring anything expensive. We don't accept charity. Of course, just simple things. That night, Brandon could barely eat. He called his personal lawyer, Dr. Richard Barnes, and scheduled an urgent meeting for the next day. Brandon, what's this about a paternity test? Asked Dr. Richard on Saturday morning in his office on Wall Street. It's complicated, Richard. I need you to tell me how to proceed in a hypothetical situation. What kind of situation? Brandon told the whole story, from the first meeting with Amber to the discovery that she had worked at the same clinic where he made his donations. Are you telling me you suspect those children might be your biological kids? The resemblance is striking, Richard, and the dates match perfectly. But she had in vitro fertilization. She didn't have sexual relations with you. Exactly, that's why I'm worried. If my suspicion is correct, it means there was a serious error at the clinic. Dr. Richard was silent for a few minutes, processing the information. Brandon, this would be a huge scandal. Using genetic material without the donor's authorization is a crime. I know, that's why I need guidance. How to proceed without harming Amber and the children. First, you need to be sure. A paternity test will settle that question, but you need her consent. And if she doesn't want to do it, then it gets complicated. You would have to go to court, but that would make everything public. Brandon spent the rest of the weekend thinking about the best way to approach Amber. He decided he needed to gain her trust before revealing his suspicions. On Monday, he returned to Fifth Avenue with diapers, wet wipes, and some jars of baby food. I brought some things that might be useful, he said, offering the bag. You don't need to keep doing this, protested Amber, but she accepted the items. I like to help. And to be honest, I like seeing the children. Why? They bring back good memories, he replied, not lying completely. During the following week, Brandon established a routine. He stopped by Fifth Avenue every day after work, always bringing something useful for Amber and the babies. Gradually, she began to relax in his presence. Do you have family? She asked on a Thursday, while Brandon was playing with Ethan. I have my parents who live in Boston, and you? Do you have family here in New York City? No, I came from the countryside a few years ago. My mother died when I was a teenager, and my father, well, we don't speak. I'm so sorry. It's all right. I learned early on that I can only rely on myself. And now on Ethan and Noah, Brandon added. That's true, she smiled. They are my reason for living. Seeing that genuine smile, Brandon felt a tightness in his chest. How could he turn this woman's life upside down with his suspicions? But at the same time, if the babies were really his biological children, he had rights and responsibilities. The following Friday, something changed in the routine. Amber wasn't on Fifth Avenue. Brandon waited for 2 hours, but she didn't show up. On Saturday, she didn't come either. Worried, he decided to ask the other street vendors. The lady with the twins? Said an older woman selling peanuts. I haven't seen her since Thursday. I wonder if something happened. Brandon felt a knot in his stomach. What if something had happened to Amber or the children? On Sunday, he decided to look for her. He vaguely remembered her mentioning she lived in a boarding house in the back of a lot. He started walking the streets near Fifth Avenue, looking for boarding houses or rooms for rent. It was in a narrow alley behind the main street that he found a small sign, Rooms for Rent, Mrs. Jenkins. He rang the bell of a faded green gate. A woman around 60 years old opened it, looking unfriendly. What do you want? Good afternoon. I'm looking for a young woman named Amber Davis. She lives here with twin babies. The woman looked him up and down, noticing the expensive suit and the brand name watch. And who might you be to her? I'm a friend. I'm worried because I haven't seen her for a few days. Amber is sick, informed Mrs. Jenkins. One of the boys is too. High fever since Thursday. Can I see her? Maybe I can help. She didn't say she was expecting visitors. Please, I just want to know if everything is all right. Mrs. Jenkins hesitated, then opened the gate. Follow me. But don't make any noise. Other tenants are resting." They crossed a small concrete patio and reached a building in the back. Mrs. Jenkins knocked softly on a wooden door. "Amber, there's a friend here to see you." "A friend?" came Amber's weak voice from the other side of the door. "It's Brandon," he called out. "I was worried about you." The door opened slowly. Amber appeared with a pale face and eyes swollen from crying. "Brandon, how did you find out where I live?" "I asked around. What happened?" "Mrs. Jenkins said you're sick." "It's Noah," she said, starting to cry again. "He's had a very high fever for 3 days. I took him to the health clinic, but they said it's just a virus. But he's not getting better." Brandon entered the small, simple room. It was a space of about 130 square feet, with a single bed, an improvised crib made of wooden crates, and a small sink. Ethan was sleeping peacefully in the crib, but Noah was red and sweating even in his sleep. "Did you take him to the hospital?" "I don't have money for a private hospital, and at the public one they told me to wait a few more days." "Amber, let's take him to Mount Sinai Hospital right now." "I can't pay." "I'll pay, don't worry about that." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Why would you do this for us?" asked Amber, wiping her tears. Brandon felt the moment had come to start revealing the truth. "Because I care about you. More than you can imagine." "I don't understand." "Now is not the time to explain. Let's take care of Noah first." Amber quickly packed some baby clothes in an old bag. Brandon held Ethan while she carried Noah, who was limp and very warm. "Mrs. Jenkins," Amber called before leaving. "If anyone asks, we'll be back tomorrow." "All right, dear. Take good care of those boys." Brandon called an Uber and they headed to the hospital. During the ride, Noah had a seizure. "Oh my God!" Amber screamed. "Noah!" "Driver, please hurry," Brandon requested, trying to stay calm. At the hospital, Noah was immediately seen in the pediatric emergency room. The doctors discovered he had viral meningitis, a serious condition that could have severe consequences if not treated quickly. "He needs to be hospitalized for at least a week," the pediatrician explained. "We'll administer antibiotics and keep him under constant observation." Amber collapsed into a chair in the waiting room, exhausted and desperate. "If I had waited one more day," she murmured, "I could have lost my son." "But you didn't," Brandon said, sitting beside her. "He'll be fine." "How am I going to pay for all this? A week at Mount Sinai must cost a fortune." "Amber, you don't need to worry about that." "But I can't accept charity from a stranger." "I'm not a stranger," Brandon said softly. She looked at him confused. "What do you mean?" Brandon took a deep breath. He knew he couldn't postpone that conversation any longer. "There are some things I need to tell you. About the boys. About me." "What things?" "You said you had in vitro fertilization at New Life Fertility Center, right?" "I did. Why?" "I donated genetic material at that same clinic 3 years ago." Amber turned pale. "What are you trying to say?" "I'm saying there's a possibility Noah and Ethan could be my biological children." The silence that followed was deafening. Amber stared at Brandon as if he had spoken in a foreign language. "That's impossible," she finally whispered. "The physical resemblance between the boys and me as a child is striking. The dates match. And now I've discovered we were both at the same clinic at the time." But I chose an anonymous donor. They told me he was a college student. Maybe they used my material by mistake, or maybe what? Maybe they did something illegal with the donations." Amber stood up abruptly. "You're crazy. How can you come here and make such an accusation?" "Amber, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just saying that you want to take my children away from me. Is that it?" "No, I would never do that." "Then why are you telling me this?" Brandon stood up too, trying to approach, but she stepped back. "Because if it's true, they're my children too, and I have the right to know them." "They are my children," Amber shouted, drawing attention from others in the waiting room. I carried them for 9 months. I stay up nights when they cry. I work the streets to support them. Amber, please calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. You show up out of nowhere in my life, pretend to be my friend, and now you want to take my children. A nurse approached. Please keep your voices down. This is a hospital. Brandon and Amber looked at each other for a long moment. She was crying again, but this time it was from anger and despair. I don't want to take your children from you, Brandon said quietly. I just want the truth. The truth is you're a rich stranger trying to destroy my family. That's not... Yes, it is. You rich people think you can have everything you want, don't you? Think you can buy anything, even children. Amber, you're being unfair. Unfair? She laughed humorlessly. It's unfair for a man who has everything in life to want to take the only treasures from a poor woman. Brandon felt as if he'd been slapped. He realized he'd approached the situation completely wrong. I'm sorry, he said. You're right. I was very insensitive. I want you to leave. Amber, get out. I don't want to see you near my children anymore. Brandon hesitated, looking toward the pediatric ICU where Noah was hospitalized. What about his treatment? Let me at least pay... I'll manage on my own, I always have. How? You don't have money for... That's not your problem. Brandon realized that insisting at that moment would only make things worse. He took his wallet and left some business cards on the chair next to Amber. If you change your mind or if you need anything for Noah, call me. I won't call. That's fine, but at least let me pay for his treatment. A sick child shouldn't suffer because of adult problems. Amber didn't respond, but she also didn't protest when Brandon went to the reception desk to arrange the payment details for the hospitalization. In the following days, Brandon heard no news about Noah. He called the hospital a few times, but since he wasn't a relative, they couldn't give him information about the patient's condition. The anxiety was consuming his life. He couldn't concentrate at work, had no appetite, and spent his nights researching online about fertility clinics and possible medical errors. It was on a Wednesday that he received an unexpected call. Hello, he answered without looking at the number. Is this Brandon? It was Amber's voice, but she sounded different, calmer. Amber, how's Noah? He's better. He'll be discharged tomorrow. What a relief. And you, how are you? Confused, she admitted. I need to talk to you. Of course, where and whenever you want. Tonight, after the children are asleep. Can you come to the boarding house? Yes, I can. And Brandon, thank you for paying for the hospital, even after the way I treated you. No need to thank me. Noah is just a baby. He didn't deserve to suffer. At 9 o'clock that night, Brandon rang the bell at Mrs. Jenkins' boarding house again. This time, the owner greeted him with a smile. Good evening, young man. Amber is expecting you. She said it's about something important. Yes, Mrs. Jenkins. That friend of yours is good people, Amber, the lady shouted toward the back. It's not every day that someone shows up willing to help without wanting anything in return. Brandon went to Amber's room. The door was slightly open, and she waved him in. The room was more organized, with some flowers in a water glass on the small plastic table. Ethan and Noah were sleeping peacefully in the crib. Noah was still a bit pale, but breathing normally. How is he? Asked Brandon, approaching the babies. Much better. The doctor said there won't be any lasting effects. Thank goodness. Amber poured 2 cups of coffee from a thermos. Sit here, she said, pointing to the only chair in the room. She sat on the edge of the bed. Amber, about what I said at the hospital. Let me speak first, she interrupted. I've had a whole week to think about what you told me. And? At first I thought you were crazy, or that you were lying to try to take my children from me. And now? Now I don't know what to think anymore, she sighed. I mean, it makes sense in a strange way. How so? When I had the treatment at the clinic, some things were a bit strange. Brandon leaned forward, giving her his full attention. What kind of things? First, they insisted a lot that I do the treatment right away before I left the company. They said it would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Go on. Second, when I asked about the donor, they gave me very vague information. They only said he was young, healthy, and a student. Usually they provide more physical details. And third, the procedure was free, completely free. They told me it was because I was an employee, but other girls who worked there had to pay even with a discount. Brandon felt his stomach churn. The pieces were falling together in a very disturbing way. Amber, do you remember who authorized your treatment? It was Dr. Patricia, the head of the laboratory. Dr. Patricia Wilson. You know her. She's the one who coordinated my donations. The two remained silent for several minutes, processing the implications of that information. Brandon, Amber said finally, if what you suspect is true, what does that mean? It means there was a serious mistake, or worse, that it was intentional. But why would anyone do something like that? I don't know. Maybe the clinic was using donations without authorization to make more profit, or maybe it was really an administrative error. Amber stood up and went to the crib, watching the two boys sleeping. Do they really look a lot like you as a child? Incredibly alike. I have the pictures at home if you want to see. And what do you want to do now? I want to do a paternity test, said Brandon, to be sure. And if it's positive, then we talk about how to proceed. But one thing I guarantee you, I will never try to take them away from you. How can I be sure of that? Because over the last few days, watching you fight for them, I realized you're a wonderful mother. Noah and Ethan are very lucky to have you. Amber was moved by his words. I was so afraid of losing them, she confessed. When you showed up saying those things, I thought I was going to lose the only good thing in my life. That will never happen. If I really am their biological father, I'll only want to be part of their lives, not replace you. How would that work? I don't know. We'll have to figure it out together, but I promise any decision will be made with the children's well-being in mind. Amber sat back down, taking Brandon's hands. Okay, let's do the test. Are you sure? I am. I want to know the truth too. And if there are legal problems with the clinic? We'll deal with that when the time comes, one thing at a time. The next morning, Brandon scheduled the paternity test at a discreet and reliable laboratory. The procedure would be simple, just a saliva collection from him and the babies. How long does it take to get the results? Asked Amber, as the technician collected the samples. About a week, replied the young man. We'll call as soon as it's ready. During that week of waiting, Brandon and Amber saw each other every day. He helped with the children's basic expenses, and she allowed him to spend time with Ethan and Noah. You know, they like you, Amber commented one afternoon, watching Noah smiling in Brandon's lap. I like them very much too, he admitted. Even if they're not my biological children, I already feel a special affection. And if they are your children, how will you explain that to your family? My parents will be shocked at first, but they always wanted grandchildren. I'm sure they'll adore the boys. And at work? Work isn't a problem. I own the company. Must be nice to have money, said Amber without bitterness. Money brings comfort, but it doesn't bring happiness. I spent the last few years focused only on working and making more money. I had no real purpose in life. And now you do? I think so. Even if the boys aren't my children, you made me realize there was something missing in my life. What? Family. People to love and protect. The following Friday, the laboratory called. Brandon was in a meeting when Nancy entered the room looking urgent. Mr. Brandon, there's a very important call from the laboratory. Can you excuse me for a few minutes? Brandon asked the clients, leaving the room. Hello? Mr. Brandon Mitchell. This is Genesis Laboratory calling. The paternity test results are ready. Brandon's heart almost stopped. And what is the result? The probability of paternity is 99.99%. You are the biological father of both babies. Brandon had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. Are you sure? Absolutely certain, sir. The reports will be ready for pickup on Monday. Thank you. Brandon hung up the phone with trembling hands. He immediately called Amber. Hello? She answered on the first ring. Amber, it's me, the lab called. And? It came back positive. 99.999% certainty. The silence on the other end of the line lasted an eternity. "Amber, I'm here," she said, her voice choked up. "I just need to process this. Where are you? Can I come there?" "I'm at the square near the boarding house with the boys. I'm coming right now." Brandon cancelled all his meetings for the day and rushed to meet Amber. She was sitting on a park bench, pushing the twins' stroller back and forth with a distant look in her eyes. "How are you?" he asked, sitting beside her. Confused, scared, relieved, all at the same time. Why relieved? Because now I know I'm not crazy. I always felt there was something strange about that whole situation at the clinic. And why scared? Because I don't know what this means for the boys' future. Or for mine. Brandon gently took her hand. "It means they now have a father who loves them and wants to be part of their lives." "Do you really want that? Not just out of obligation?" "Amber, these past few days taking care of Ethan and Noah has become the best part of my day. It's not obligation, it's love." They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the children sleeping peacefully in the stroller. "What do we do now?" asked Amber. "First, we go after the truth about what happened at the clinic. Someone will have to explain how my genetic material was used without authorization. And then? Then we build a new life for our family." "Our family?" repeated Amber, surprised. "Ethan, Noah, you and me. It might not be a conventional family, but it's our family." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The following Monday, Brandon contacted Dr. Richard to organize a formal investigation against New Life Fertility Center. "This is going to cause a terrible mess, Brandon," warned the lawyer. "Fertility clinics are million-dollar businesses. They will fight tooth and nail. I don't care, I want justice, and I want to know if there are other victims. And Amber, is she willing to testify?" "She will do whatever is necessary. She wants answers too." The first step was to try to locate Dr. Patricia Wilson, who had been responsible for both of their procedures at the clinic. They discovered she had retired suddenly 6 months ago, shortly after Amber left the company. "That's no coincidence," said Dr. Richard. "We'll need to find her." It took 2 weeks, but they got Dr. Patricia's address. She lived in a simple house in the Brooklyn neighborhood, very different from the standard of living she had when working at the clinic. Brandon and Dr. Richard decided to visit her on a Thursday morning. Amber preferred to stay with the children, but was anxious for the results. "Dr. Patricia Wilson?" asked Dr. Richard when a woman in her 50s opened the door. "Yes, that's me. How can I help you?" "I'm attorney Richard Barnes, and this is my client, Brandon Mitchell. We'd like to talk about New Life Fertility Center." The woman's face lost all its color. "I have nothing to say about that clinic." "Doctor, we have evidence that there were irregularities with genetic material donations. It would be better if we talked civilly." "Are you journalists?" she asked nervously. "No. We are people who were harmed by the clinic's actions." Dr. Patricia hesitated for a long moment, looking around as if expecting to see someone watching. "Come in." But quickly. They went into a small, modestly furnished room. The woman seemed extremely tense. "What do you want to know?" "We want to know why my client's genetic material was used in a fertilization without his authorization," said Dr. Richard, getting straight to the point. I don't know what you're talking about." "Doctor, we have proof. A paternity test confirmed that my client is the father of twins, born to a clinic employee who received his genetic material." "Which employee?" "Amber Davis," said Brandon. Dr. Patricia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Amber. Of course it had to be her." "Why do you say that?" "Because she was the only one who questioned the procedure." "How so?" "Look, you won't understand the pressure I was under at the time." "What kind of pressure?" Dr. Patricia stood up and began pacing back and forth. The clinic was going through financial difficulties. Dr. William, the owner, was desperate to increase revenue. "Go on." "He began pressuring us to use genetic material from premium donors in more procedures." "Premium donors?" "Young, healthy donors with good looks and higher education, like Mr. Mitchell." Brandon felt nauseous. "You were selling my genetic material without authorization." It wasn't exactly selling, it was reuse. That's the same thing, Brandon exploded. I know, I knew it was wrong, but Dr. William threatened me. He said I would be fired if I didn't cooperate. And Amber? Why her? Amber was always an exemplary employee. When she came to ask for treatment, Dr. William saw an opportunity. What opportunity? To use her as a guinea pig. If it worked with an employee, they could expand the scheme to more clients. My God, murmured Dr. Richard. Amber didn't know anything. She really thought she was receiving material from a regular anonymous donor. And how many other people were affected? Asked Brandon. Dr. Patricia lowered her head. Many. For 2 years, genetic material from about 5 premium donors was used in dozens of procedures without authorization. Dozens, shouted Brandon. Please keep your voices down. My neighbors... Doctor, are you telling me I could have dozens of biological children out there? Not dozens for you specifically. Your material was used about 7 times. 7 times? Including Amber. Brandon had to sit down. The reality was much worse than he had imagined. Where are these other children? Asked Dr. Richard. I don't know. Some couples were from other states, even from other countries. Do you have the records? Dr. William destroyed everything when he found out I was questioning the procedures. When was that? About 8 months ago. Soon after, he forced me to retire. And him? Where is Dr. William now? He sold the clinic and moved to the United States. As far as I know, he's living in Florida. Brandon and Dr. Richard exchanged worried looks. Dr. Patricia, said the lawyer, would you be willing to testify officially about all this? I'm afraid. Afraid of what? Dr. William made me sign a confidentiality agreement. If I say anything, he could sue me. Doctor, what he did was a crime. No confidentiality agreement is valid to cover up criminal activities. Are you sure? Absolutely. And besides, you are also a victim. He coerced you into participating in the scheme. Dr. Patricia was silent for a few minutes, clearly wrestling with her conscience. All right, she finally said, I'll testify, but I want legal protection. You'll have all the necessary protection, assured Dr. Richard. When they left Dr. Patricia's house, Brandon was visibly shaken. Richard, I might have 6 other children scattered around the world who don't even know I exist. Brandon, one thing at a time. First, let's take care of Amber and the twins' situation. Then we'll think about the other cases. How can I simply ignore that other children exist? It's not ignoring, it's being practical. You don't have enough information to locate these other families. But I have to try. And you will try. But first, let's make sure Amber and the children are legally protected. That night, Brandon told everything to Amber. She listened silently, holding Noah in her lap, while Ethan slept in the crib. So there are other children? She asked when he finished. Apparently, yes. And you're going to look for them? I don't know. It's very complicated, Amber. These families underwent treatments believing they were receiving material from anonymous donors. Like I believed. Exactly. If I suddenly appear in their lives, it could cause a lot of pain. But they have the right to know the truth. They do. But they also have the right to live in peace. Amber thoughtfully stroked Noah's little head. You know what I think? What? I think you should give them the option to know or not. How so? Publish a discreet notice in the newspapers. Something like, families who underwent treatment at New Life Fertility Center between 2021 and 2023, please contact for important information. That's a good idea. Those who want to know will contact us. Those who don't will simply ignore it. Exactly. Amber, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. How do you feel knowing there might be other women who are also mothers of my biological children? Amber thought for a moment before answering. It's strange, but at the same time I feel sorry for them. Imagine the shock of discovering your children have a biological father you didn't even know existed. And you? How do you feel about me? Has everything changed since we discovered the truth? It has changed, but not in a bad way. How so? Before, I saw you as a rich man trying to help a poor street vendor. Now I see you as the father of my children who wants to be part of their lives. And is that good or bad? It's good, because it means Ethan and Noah will have a present father figure, and that's something I always wanted for them. Amber, I need to tell you something else. What? I want to officially assume paternity of the boys, register them under my name too. Does that mean they'll have your last name? If you allow it, yes, they would be Ethan Davis Mitchell and Noah Davis Mitchell. What about custody? Do you want to share custody with me? Only if you want to. I won't force anything. Amber looked at Ethan sleeping in the crib, then at Noah in her lap. You know, all this time raising them alone, I always worried whether I could give them everything they need. You're giving the most important thing, love. But I can't give quality education, travels, experiences that money can provide. And I can't give what you give, the unconditional affection of a mother. So we're a good team? I think so. In that case, I accept sharing custody, but with one condition. What? I want to keep working. I don't want to become a kept woman. Amber, you don't need to sell jewelry on the street. I can help you start your own business. Or, no, I want to work on my own merit. If you want to help me find a real job. What kind of job? I have a technical degree in administration. I've always wanted to work in an office. At my company, there's an opening for an administrative assistant. The salary isn't very high, but it includes health insurance and all benefits. You'd give me a job? I would. But it would be based on merit, not as a favor. You'd have to prove you deserve the position. Perfect. That's exactly how I want it. 2 weeks later, Amber started working at Brandon's company as an administrative assistant. He arranged for a high-quality daycare near the office for Ethan and Noah. The transformation in Amber's life was remarkable. She swapped her simple clothes for more formal attire, gained confidence, and quickly stood out at work. How are you feeling? Brandon asked one Friday when they met at the daycare to pick up the children. Happy, she replied with a smile. For the first time in a long while, I feel like I have a future. And the boys, how are they adjusting? They love the daycare, and they love having a daddy. It was true. Ethan and Noah, now 8 months old, clearly recognized Brandon and showed joy whenever they saw him. Amber, there's something I want to propose to you. What is it? How about we all move to a bigger house, a place where the children can have a backyard to play in? Brandon, I can't afford a house rent. It wouldn't be rent. It would be our house, in both our names. Amber stopped walking. What do you mean? I want to buy a house for our family, a house where you, me, Ethan, and Noah can live together. But we're not a couple. No, we're something better. We're an unconventional family that loves and respects each other. And how would living together work? Each would have their private space, but we'd share the common areas and the responsibility for the children. Do you really believe this can work? I do, and you? Amber looked at Ethan in the stroller, then at Noah sleeping in Brandon's arms. I think it's worth trying. They found a beautiful house in Soho with 3 bedrooms, a backyard, and a recreation area. Brandon insisted the property be in Amber's name as well, ensuring she had security regardless of any future problems between them. The move happened on a sunny Saturday. Mrs. Jenkins, the boarding house owner, came to help and couldn't stop repeating how she'd never seen such a beautiful story. You're proof that God works in mysterious ways, she said, watching Brandon assembling the twins' crib in the children's room. What do you mean, Mrs. Jenkins? Amber asked. Well, dear, if that clinic hadn't made all that mess, you never would have met, and these boys wouldn't have the wonderful family they have today. It was an interesting perspective. All that suffering and confusion had resulted in a unique and special family. 6 months after moving into the new house, the investigation against New Life Fertility Center finally bore fruit. Dr. William was extradited from the United States and would face criminal charges in Brazil. The charges include document forgery, misuse of genetic material, and operating a fraudulent scheme, Dr. Richard explained during a meeting in his office. And the other families? Were you able to locate anyone? 3 families came forward after the newspaper notice was published. 2 want to join the lawsuit. 1 preferred to remain anonymous. And the tests? Did they confirm paternity? They confirmed. You have 5 more biological children, Brandon, 2 boys and 3 girls. Brandon was silent for a moment. Even though he'd been expecting this news, it was still shocking to hear. Do the families want to meet me? One of them does. The other parents preferred to keep their distance but said the door is open for future contact if the children want it when they're older. And the family that wants to meet me? It's a couple from Boston. They have a 2-year-old girl named Isabella. They want you to be part of her life, but while respecting their role as the primary parents. It's a situation similar to ours, commented Amber. Exactly. They understood that you don't want to take their daughter away, but they want her to know who her biological father is. When can I meet her? They suggested a meeting next weekend at a park in Boston. They want it to be a neutral and relaxed environment. The following Saturday, Brandon, Amber, Ethan and Noah traveled to Boston. The meeting would be at Boston Common, a spacious and family-friendly place. When they arrived, they saw a young couple sitting at a picnic table with a little girl with curly hair. Even from a distance, Brandon could see the physical resemblance. "That must be them," said Amber. They approached nervously. The couple stood up when they saw them. "Brandon?" asked the man. "That's me. You must be Daniel." "That's right. This is my wife Jennifer, and this is our daughter Isabella." Isabella was a feminine copy of Ethan and Noah. The same blue eyes, the same face shape, even the same way of smiling. "Hi, Isabella," said Brandon, kneeling down to her level. "You are a very pretty girl." "Thank you," she replied in a shy voice. "And these are Ethan and Noah," introduced Amber. "Your little brothers." The word hung in the air for a moment. It was the first time someone had verbalized that relationship. "Are they babies?" asked Isabella, interested. "Yes, they are," replied Jennifer. "How about we all play together?" What followed was a magical afternoon. Isabella played with the twins on the playground while the adults talked. The girl seemed fascinated to have 2 babies to look after. "How are you all handling all of this?" asked Daniel. "At first it was very difficult," admitted Amber. "But now we see it was the best thing that could have happened to us." "We feel the same way," said Jennifer. "Isabella always wanted siblings. Now she has 3. 3? The twins and another boy in New York City, the son of one of the other families. They also want to stay in touch." Brandon smiled. His family was growing in an unexpected way. As they talked, Isabella brought Noah in her arms, with Amber's help, and sat down next to Brandon. "Daddy Daniel said that you are also my daddy," she commented naturally. "It's true, Isabella, but you have 2 daddies. Daddy Daniel, who takes care of you every day, and me, who is your daddy of the heart." "Like Santa Claus?" Everyone laughed at the innocent comparison. "Something like that," said Brandon. "I show up from time to time to see you and play with you. And can I call you Daddy too?" Brandon looked at Daniel, who nodded his head. "Yes, you can, my love." Back in New York City, Brandon and Amber established a routine of regular visits to Boston. Isabella became part of their lives, just as Ethan and Noah became part of hers. "You know what's most interesting?" commented Amber one night, while they were putting the twins to sleep. "What?" "How the children accepted all of this so naturally. For them, having several siblings and parents is completely normal. Children are more open than adults to non-traditional families. Maybe we should learn from them." "What do you mean?" "That maybe we're overcomplicating things. For the children, we are simply a family that loves each other. Period." Brandon stopped folding the baby's clothes and looked at Amber. "You're right. We're always questioning ourselves if we're doing the right thing, if our dynamic is strange, if people will understand. But what matters is that it's working. The children are happy, we are happy. The rest is details." "Amber, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you ever thought about, I don't know, expanding our family?" "How so?" "Having more children." "Naturally." Amber blushed. "Brandon, we're not a couple." "I know, but we are a family, and families can grow in different ways. Are you suggesting that we—" "I'm not suggesting anything specific. I'm just saying that if one day you want to have more children, I would like it to be with me." Amber fell silent for a long moment. I need to think about this. Of course, there's no rush. 3 months later, on a Sunday morning, Amber woke Brandon early. We need to talk. Did something happen? He asked, worried. Remember that conversation about expanding the family? I do. I think we already have. Brandon sat up in bed, confused. What do you mean? Amber showed him a positive pregnancy test. How is this possible? He asked, still processing the information. In the most natural way in the world, she laughed. It happened last week when we watched that movie together on the couch. Amber, how do you feel? Surprised, scared, happy, confused, all at the same time. And what about us? What does this mean? I don't know. Maybe it means it's time for us to stop defining our relationship and just live it. Do you want to marry me? Are you proposing to me? I guess I am, he smiled. Amber Davis, will you marry me? Only if it's for love, not out of obligation. It is for love. I love you. I love our children. I love our crazy and unconventional family. In that case, yes, I will. The wedding took place 6 months later, in a simple ceremony in their backyard. Ethan and Noah, now 14 months old, were the ring bearers. Isabella was the flower girl. Mrs. Jenkins was Amber's matron of honor. I never imagined my life could be this happy, said Amber during the vows. Neither did I, replied Brandon. You and the children have taught me that family isn't about blood or conventions. It's about love, respect, and mutual dedication. 6 months after the wedding, Olivia was born, a blue-eyed girl who completed the family. Now we're officially a large family, Brandon joked at the hospital, holding his newborn daughter while Amber rested. And a happy family, she added. 2 years later, the Mitchell-Davis family's story gained notoriety when the lawsuit against New Life Fertility Center was concluded. Dr. William was sentenced to 8 years in prison and a heavy fine. All the affected families received compensation. What will you do with the money? A journalist asked during an interview. Create an educational fund for children born from in vitro fertilization, replied Brandon. We want something good to come out of this whole mess. And how is the relationship between all the families involved? We're one big extended family, explained Amber. The children consider themselves siblings, and we spend holidays together whenever we can. Any advice for other families who might be going through similar situations? To keep their focus on what truly matters, the children's well-being, said Brandon. In the end, love and dedication overcome any conventional family structure. 5 years after Brandon first saw Amber on Fifth Avenue, they were at a country house in the Hamptons celebrating Olivia's 3rd birthday. Ethan and Noah, now 6 years old, were playing in the yard with Isabella and the other siblings from different families. It was a chaotic and wonderful scene at the same time. Do you have any regrets? Asked Amber, seeing Brandon watching the children with a smile on his face. Not a single one. And you? Just one. What is it? That I didn't meet you sooner. If you had met me sooner, maybe we wouldn't have this beautiful, crazy family. That's true. I think everything happened at the right time. Even all the mess, all the suffering. Especially because of that, the suffering taught us to value what we have now. That night, after all the children had fallen asleep scattered throughout the house, Brandon and Amber sat on the porch looking at the stars. You know what I sometimes think about? Said Amber. What? If the person who made that mistake at the clinic imagines they changed so many people's lives for the better. Probably not. To them it must have been just another routine procedure. Well, they should know that sometimes our biggest mistakes can bring the greatest blessings to other people's lives. Do you think we should try to find out who it was? No, I prefer to leave it a mystery. Some guardian angels prefer to remain anonymous. Amber Davis Mitchell, you are a wise woman. And you, Brandon Mitchell, are the luckiest man in the world. Why? Because you found a family by chance and discovered that chance sometimes knows exactly what it's doing. They stayed there in silence, listening to the sounds of the night and feeling the peace of those who built something beautiful out of chaos. Inside the house, 7 children slept peacefully, the result of a medical error that turned into the greatest blessing of their lives. An unconventional family but full of love that proved the strongest bonds aren't always those of blood, but those of choice and dedication. And in the back bedroom, in a dresser drawer kept like a treasure, was the first positive paternity test, the document that had changed everything and started the most beautiful story any of them could have imagined. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Brandon and Amber made the right decisions throughout the story? We would love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.